Well, I think it's important that we recognize that God's revelation comes in a cultural context, this ancient world of the Hebrew people and the surrounding people groups. And they have in place norms, customs, mores, and God at times is going to work with his people along those lines. At other times he's going to intervene and direct his people to, in a sense, be counterculture and work against those norms. And there's a very helpful book, Chris Wright, a well-known Old Testament writer. His book, God's Ethics for God's People, I think is one that I like and find helpful. He talks about the work of God in culture under three headings. God will, in some cases, actually reject and prohibit the Hebrew people from entering and participating in certain cultural activities that are part of the ancient world. Things like human sacrifice, things like idolatry. God will reject and prohibit his people from going there. There's also other aspects of culture that God will say, we're going to tolerate with control and, in a sense, maybe even move to some kind of redemptive understanding of how we're going to implement or deal with these issues of culture, maybe like slavery. And so in the Hebrew culture, because of sabbatical year, we have opportunity, in a sense, to break the cycle of slavery after 6 years for the Hebrew people. And so there's that opportunity, at least, to intervene and to move culture, perhaps in a more redemptive way, as God reveals his will and his way to his people. Then thirdly, God will at times affirm cultural practices. The family is the basic unit of all society and culture, and God affirms that. Ideas of clan and tribe leadership, wisdom as it's accrued in culture and passed down, all those things are things that God would affirm and approve for his people. Well, the cities of refuge, a very interesting feature of the book of Joshua. Numbers mentions this first, and there's this, in a sense, prelude to this idea. One of the issues in this culture is blood vengeance. And blood vengeance is about retaliation. It's about if someone in your clan or tribe is killed, you have obligation to respond and to, in a sense, avenge that death. And death begets death, and there's this endless cycle, really, of violence. We still see that today, I think, in much of Middle Eastern mindset as we deal with our modern world, this issue of blood vengeance. And so what God is doing in the cities of refuge is breaking into history, intervening in such a way that he's going to say, here we're going to, in a sense, try to break a destructive cycle, this cycle of blood vengeance. And it's particularly related to one issue for the Hebrew people, what we would call accidental murder, manslaughter, accidental killing. The cities of refuge, 3 on either side of the Jordan River, 6 cities of refuge, are places where a person who is guilty of that crime of accidental manslaughter can flee, plead their case, and find safe haven, can be harbored there and not be subject to the retaliation of the blood avenger. And so this is something that God has, again, planted in the covenant relationship with his people, a way for him to try to bring about a redemptive move, really, in the way that we practice and think about cultural issues like blood vengeance. And so Joshua is, I think, helpful there and reminds us again that God is concerned about the way we live, about the way we interact. And here's a destructive practice, a destructive custom of blood vengeance that we can intervene in and perhaps move culture in a more positive and helpful way with the cities of refuge.